We got an update on Drew Allar's status going into the Michigan State game on Black Friday. What's the impact and how will it affect the game against the Spartans? We discuss here on Locked On Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And that is right, you are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, bringing you everything Penn State Nittany Lions, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning a $5 moneyline bet. It's that simple. Your pick just has to win. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Got an update on if Drew Allar is going to be playing against Michigan State. Bo Pribula looked pretty good against Rutgers as he finished the majority of the second half en route to a 27-6 victory. But we'll have more takeaways from that game, including Allar, Pribula, which quarterback, because if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. So we're discussing that, plus some additional takeaways that I had. And is Manny Diaz going to be sticking around at Penn State? We've posed that question for some time, but let's have it answered in this show. Before we get to any of that, help out the channel. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Let me know what you think about Drew Allar and Bo Pribula in the comments, which quarterback you're taking, and any additional takeaways that you had from the Ruckers game in the comments, and like the show as well. We'll start with Drew Allar's suspected injury, right? He went into the blue medical tent. He emerged and was not going to suit up anymore. The helmet came off, and Drew Allar was no longer going to play in that game against Rutgers. And according to James Franklin, he handled it well. So in the press conference, it sounds like he moved these to Mondays now, right? So we get this information 24 hours in advance. Drew Allar is going to play. He's expected to play, and this is James Franklin's words that everything's going back to normal. Everything is expected to be status quo for the Michigan State game. So that answers any question if Drew Allar is or is not going to play against the Spartans. He will be quarterback number one, but here's where the shakeup is. I fully anticipate that Drew and Bo are going to split reps in some sort of case. Not back and forth or 50-50, but I think we will see a decent amount of Bo Pribula in this game. And why I say that is because Drew Allar, if we all saw it, we're not going to pretend like this isn't an injury. He went into the medical tent and he does not come back in because he took a pretty rough hit to the throwing shoulder, may I add. And let's not even think any concussion symptoms. I don't think watching that play back and watching it happen in real time that this was a bad injury, that this was a concussion. However, for Drew Allar to stay on the sideline and for Bo Pribula to come in the game, it was very serious. It was very serious. So Bo Pribula did well handling everything, and James Franklin did address that Drew was going to be he is going to be playing, and Bo Pribula, he didn't really make a note of if he's going to be in the game itself, but he's probably going to play because he got his throwing shoulder hurt, and that's ultimately what happened. So it's a short week, folks. It's a short week. I can't imagine that Drew Allar is going to, unless he's totally 100%. He can't be. He can't be. But I don't think you need to push him any further. You don't need to push him a bunch if he's not 100% against a team like Michigan State. And especially when the season, it's 10-2. They want to go to a New Year's Six bowl game, but that's essentially it. There's no college football playoff anymore. There's no reason to protect him. And I think the team ultimately wants to see more out of what Bo Pribula can do in the event of what happens, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. I anticipate that the team is going to make sure that Drew Allar's happy, that the offensive coordinator is based around Drew Allar's skill set. Bo Pribula is just a dual threat. He can throw the football too, even though Penn State doesn't ask him to throw a whole bunch. However, you have to see what you have in your other quarterback options. And depending on how the result goes, maybe Jackson Smollett gets a little bit of playing time in this game if it is a blowout. Michigan State does not match up well. This is going to be another game where Penn State is going to use its elite defense and is going to be able to win this game pretty handedly if everything goes according to plan. I don't expect Michigan State to be much of a competitor in this game. So Drew Allar is going to play. He's going to start, but I am anticipating that Bo Pribula is going to be in the game in select spots, maybe handle a drive or two just to change things because Penn State saw success on offense. And with that being said, there are some other takeaways that we really need to discuss from this game. Is there a quarterback controversy? Should there be a quarterback controversy for Penn State? Bo Pribula versus Drew Allar. So I get it. Backup quarterback's the most popular guy in town. I totally understand that. However, Drew Allar's the five-star quarterback, and Bo Pribula, we haven't really seen him attempt a lot of passes in games. But let's discuss because I know that's what the fans want to know. Is it Drew Allar or is it Bo Pribula? Before we get to any of that, let's hear from one of our sponsors on today's episode, and that is Listening.com. College students, listen up. There's an incredible app called Listening.com, which can take any academic paper, PDF, or class material and turn it into an audiobook. Listening.com is the app that turns academic papers, textbooks, PDFs, websites, and emails into audio so you can listen to them on the go. Instead of sitting at a desk to read, the free app, the app frees you up so you can learn from anywhere. Best app in the world for listening to academic material. You can read math questions, automatically skip citations and footnotes, and it can pronounce difficult technical words. It can also jump straight to the chapter, the section that you want to listen to. It even has a one-click note-taking button where it automatically puts the last 10 seconds into a notepad, so you don't have to type the notes while you listen. And best of all, if you use this link, you get 3 weeks free in a trial. That is listening.com/lockedon, listening.com/lockedon to get your first 3 weeks for free. So go ahead, give it a try. 3 weeks free by visiting listening.com/lockedon. And Locked On has something very proud of late as it just launched its first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel. That is a Locked On Sports Today 24/7. You can get all of the latest content. I had a few more takeaways from this Penn State Rutgers game. 27-6 win. Penn State did what it had to do, to summarize it. Penn State saw that, like Michigan, took the football out of the hands of J.J. McCarthy and simply ran the football for the remainder of the game. Well, that was the case for the Rutgers game. Penn State didn't have to do anything fancy. They didn't have to do any trickery. They didn't have to get creative. They were able to just run the football and run it with success when Bo Pribula came into the game and added that dual threat aspect because the running game had a little bit of rejuvenation, if you will, when Drew Allar did go to the sideline and Bo Pribula came in. And that's obvious. Bo Pribula is a third runner you have to respect, whether it's Singleton, Allen, and then now Pribula in this case, any of those guys. And he does make appropriate reads. He is very good at reading the line of scrimmage, the linebacker, the defensive end, whatever have you, because that is his main skill set. And Drew Allar, his main skill set is supposed to be throwing the football right and being able to pinpoint. And when wide receivers are getting open, Drew Allar can do that. But in this game against Rutgers has a top 5 pass defense. A lot of people probably don't believe me, but the evidence is there. They have a top 5 pass defense in terms of yards per play allowed, and they've faced Michigan. They've faced Ohio State. So the fact that they are one of the best in the country, despite playing who they have played, is pretty telling, and Penn State knew that they had an advantage by going up against Rutgers' run defense, which wasn't bad either. I mean, so Rutgers has held those opponents in check. Michigan to 31, Ohio State to 35 and Penn State to 27. That was a good defense to test what Penn State was going to do with its new offensive coordinators. But again, to summarize, Penn State didn't have to do a whole lot. They could run the football knowing that, hey, let's just chew some clock, get in, get out, and get a win on senior day for our guys that have been with the program for a long time. Drew Allar versus Bo Pribula, the first takeaway here, because everybody wants this discussed. Can James Franklin and Penn State win with a pro-style quarterback? Didn't exactly work out with Christian Hackenberg when they made the switch to Trace McSorley. Big Ten championship, Rose Bowl appearance, and everything else. The New Year's Six Bowls. It seemed like there was a significant shift when Penn State went away from dual threat quarterbacks. And now it's happening all over again. Deja vu. I know we have a smaller sample size here. We don't have, Trace McSorley also had Saquon Barkley, Chris Godwin, Mike Gesicki. Imagine if Drew Allar had and KJ Hamler. Imagine if those guys, any of them had been on this team. And that's going to be a separate takeaway. I'm going to talk about the wide receivers a little more. So you can't be overly critical about Drew Allar. Yes, Drew Allar was underwhelming. He made mistakes. The offense did not look good, but it's not all his fault. It's not all his fault. And Bo Pribula, yes, can do a little more with his legs, but overall, the passing game was never really that sharp. And it doesn't matter if, but because they attempted one pass against Rutgers, one pass. So what does that say about Bo Pribula? Well, it doesn't really say anything. The jury is still out here. I'm going to trust and say that you need to re-recruit Drew Allar to stay at Penn State. The plan was supposed to be that Drew Allar starts for the next 2 years and goes into the NFL draft and becomes a first-round pick. And then Bo Pribula takes over as that red shirt sophomore, red shirt junior. He's a red shirt freshman in this case, so that red shirt junior, and then starts for the final 2 seasons. And then the torch is passed to Ethan Grunkmeyer, hypothetically, maybe a Jackson Smolik. You need as many quarterbacks as you can get. Quarterback depth is huge, and Penn State understands that because remember when they lost Will Levis, look what happened when Sean Clifford went down and Taquan Roberson had to come in that game against Iowa. I won't go off on too much of a tangent, but I am for keeping and having both quarterbacks, and I think that a good offensive coordinator will be able to use their skill sets appropriately. Drew Allar is the better quarterback. He's the better passer. When he gets some targets, hopefully next season, some better ones, maybe Penn State will be able to have more of a well-oiled machine offensively, but I don't know why you can't use them both. Where Drew Allar plays a majority of the game, is the starter, is quarterback number one, because look what happened against West Virginia. We thought that was a sign of things to come, not a mirage. It ended up being a mirage. But then use Bo Pribula as that change of pace kind of guy. Let him throw some passes, throw in some trick plays. If Penn State, now in the case of this season, Penn State would have ran them. Penn State would have ran them if they felt that they worked, that they were perfect. You don't put a play into the playbook just for the sake of it. You have to be able to execute it and run it properly. And that's why we didn't see a lot of the trickery, Bo Pribula, Drew Allar. And sometimes it looked pretty off. It did not look that great. And that's why we didn't see it a whole bunch. We saw it selectively. But moving forward, I think Drew Allar is still quarterback number one. He's the guy you go with. You don't tell your 5-star quarterback, one of the highest graded players in program history, to join the team and tell him to hop into the transfer portal and say, we're moving forward with Bo. That's not how it's going to be. Penn State values quarterback depth above all else. They are not going to say to someone, a program would take Drew Allar as a starter immediately. Drew Allar has all the potential in the world. He is not broken. He just had a down year as a first-year starter, and I think people need to remember that. Just because Bo Pribula can play cleanup duty, can play mop-up duty against Rutgers when they already had a lead, that's good. That's what quarterback depth is called. But we've been to the practices. We've seen both of these guys throw. Drew Allar has the better arm. Drew Allar also makes the better reads in terms of the offense, knows to make the right checks, knows where to look. And that was the reason Tommy Stevens and Trace McSorley had a quarterback battle, and why McSorley won, because McSorley could read a defense better than Stevens. That doesn't show up in the stat column, but it's something that Penn State takes into consideration. Drew Allar is going to win any sort of quarterback battle between the two until further notice. Bo Pribula is a great backup quarterback behind Drew Allar, and that's the way it's going to be moving forward. And I don't think you should change it because you need depth in this world of college football, the transfer portal, everything else. Keep both. Don't cast out one. Try to keep both happy as best as you can. My next takeaway is about the wide receivers. The wide receivers have not been good. They've been awful to this point, and it feels like they're not getting any better, period. Trey Wallace being hurt certainly hasn't helped. Keandre Lambert-Smith had select games where he proved that they're all talented. They're all talented in their own right, but when you needed them to show up against Michigan and Ohio State, they were blanketed, they were covered, they were not getting open. And James Franklin was asked about this specifically in the press conference. Hey, the wide receivers have taken the snaps, they've taken a toll. Guys, they really aren't getting a lot of action in games because they don't trust them. They don't trust the wide receivers. They don't. Dante Cephas is still struggling with the playbook. Not sure what's going on there. People criticize Caden Saunders for not getting enough playing time against Rutgers. Caden Saunders, remember, is 5'9", well short of 200 pounds. And if they're going to be running the ball more, you're not going to put in one of your smaller wide receivers. Lambert-Smith and Dante Cephas, I don't even think they caught a pass against Rutgers. I really don't. I think Liam Clifford had the only one, and that was it. Like in terms of a big play, Tyler Warren, Johnson got their looks, but there wasn't a lot of passing to be had because that's what the offense was this year in terms of the passing attack. There was no passing attack outside of the West Virginia game and a little bit of Maryland. They took such a step back. I look back at the West Virginia game and I say, what happened? Because there was so much talent, there was so much promise of what could have been, and it never materialized. It never manifested, whatever was the case. But the wide receivers have to be a huge letdown here. Dante Cephas was supposed to be the Mitchell Tinsley 2.0 to come in, be able to be an effective starter, and he wasn't. You watch those guys, they don't get open. Keandre Lambert-Smith selectively gets open, but when you need him to get open against better secondaries, he's nowhere to be found. Dante Cephas, the same thing, a little confusion, miscommunication. These guys are below average blockers. Why was the rushing attack so much better last year? Because Juice Scruggs was on the offense. Brenton Strange was on the offense. I know that's an offensive lineman and a tight end, but Mitchell Tinsley could block very well. Parker Washington could block very well. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Dante Cephas, Liam Clifford, Caden Saunders, Malik McLean, any of them, they're not that. Or else the running game would be just as effective because the offensive line was supposed to have taken a step forward. The wide receivers were really disappointing. You can't put it all on Drew Allar. You can't put it all on the offensive coordinator, too. Mike Yurcich was responsible for game planning and preparation and play calling, but I feel like there was a hesitation. There was a lack of confidence because the wide receivers were not giving you they were giving you little to no advantage week to week, unfortunately, and that was just the case. You saw it again against Ruckers. Ruckers was an appropriate team to kind of weed some of this stuff out again. They were a top 5 pass defense. They have been that way all season long, and it showed again. So Penn State, what did it do? It pulled a Michigan and ran the ball the rest of the game because they knew that's how they could win on that given day. How are they going to look on a turf field, indoors, Ford Field, where the Detroit Lions play? I would hope to think better because Michigan State doesn't do a lot of good things defensively. They don't have a very good pass defense. It's mediocre at best. So are we going to see Drew Allar, who is a little banged up, most likely to his throwing shoulder, what we assume? I can't confirm or deny that because we don't get a health report. We just get, oh, he's available, he's not. I understand that. Trey Wallace probably isn't going to play. I don't think he will. Save him for the bowl game and try to game plan for next season because he does come back. He will come back. So what are KLS and Dante Cephas and any of those guys going to give you because they did not live up to expectations and fell very much short of them? Another takeaway that I had, as I'm going to continue to grill the offense here, and then I got one takeaway about the defense too. Nicholas Singleton is in there somewhere. The true Nicholas Singleton is there. I don't know if he's hiding. I don't know what's going on. But Singleton, you saw some glimpses of what he was able to do down the stretch of the game. And look what happens when you run him outside the tackles. His speed, his vision opens up. Oh my goodness. Who would have thought that Nicholas Singleton, the speedster, was better outside of the numbers than in between the tackles? It does not take a rocket scientist to figure this out. And I'm glad that Ty Howell And I'm glad that Ty Howell and J1 Sider had figured it out in a short matter of time, in just 5 days' time, because they took over the offense from Mike Yurcich, who was probably fired that Saturday or Sunday. We got the report on Sunday. He might have been fired right after the game on Saturday. Who knows? But they had little time to prepare, and you saw some different things, and one of them was getting Nicholas Singleton back to the outside. So I have no idea what was going on, what Mike Yurcich or anybody else was trying to tell Singleton to do, what they wanted him to do, but they have to. It still wasn't enough for me. It wasn't. I'm glad that Singleton is still the player that he is, that he's not completely lost, because he wasn't hurt. He he just, the yards per carry was not there like the way it was a season ago. He wasn't the home run threat. So where did that all go? It's because you kept trying to use a square peg and mash it into a round hole. Nicholas Singleton is not a between the tackles running back. I would say that he's more like a Jahmyr Gibbs, and Katron Allen is more like a David Montgomery for the Detroit Lions. I hope football fans understand that comparison. Allen's the power back, the punisher, and then Jahmyr Gibbs is the explosive player like Singleton's supposed to be. So why weren't they being utilized that way? It felt like Allen and Singleton were being forced to be utilized the exact same way. And maybe that's on coaching there. Maybe that's on the offensive coordinator. But Singleton's still there. I know he will have a better, because that's why he was a 5-star, because of his preparation, because of his discipline. I feel like Nicholas Singleton is a no-nonsense kind of guy. Just interviewing him a couple of times, asking him some questions in the offseason and post-game pressers, that this is going to haunt him. And until he fixes every little bit of his game to get back to know where he can be, he's going to study and he's going to work. And that's good news for Penn State, who get both Singleton and Allen for next season, after the sophomore slump. The sophomore slump truly what was bad this year. And Katron Allen, good enough, but still he was better freshman. They were both better their freshman years. It was so strange. The sophomore slump is real, folks. The sophomore slump is real. Another takeaway that I had, and this is the last one, the secondary, Penn State's pass defense took a step back. They were supposed to, analytically, up until the Ohio State and the Michigan State games, this group was top 5 in the nation. Bona fide, clear cut, no debating it. And even arguably number 1 for a point in time. And then I don't know what happened. Kalen King, Johnny Dixon gave up quite a few catches in this game. It was always somebody. It was really always somebody. Daquan Hardy, I think, had a much better season compared to 2022. And then Johnny Dixon has played his way into a draft pick. I think Kalen King has slid down some draft boards, but he'll still probably go into the draft if he's a 3rd or 4th round pick. That's probably where I'd place him right about now, with the talent that's going in from the defensive back spot. But I don't know what happened in the secondary either. The secondary went from top 5, and then you can look at all the analytics you want, but how about the actual statistics themselves? Yards per play, yards per pass attempt. Penn State somehow went from top 5 to barely top 30. Rutgers completed a little they completed one too many passes against Penn State's pass defense. I don't know if this had to do with scheme. Kalen King got picked on quite a bit against Indiana. It felt like Johnny Dixon was the culprit this time around against Rutgers. When Rutgers was able to move the football, who were they targeting? Johnny Dixon. Daquan Hardy, like I said, had a much better season compared to 2022. But I don't know what happened. It has to be a mindset thing, because how were you good all the way leading up to the Ohio State game, and then you just combust? I'm not really sure, but the pass defense definitely took a step back, and we didn't see a lot of Cam Miller moving forward. It was very strange what ultimately happened to the pass defense for Penn State. And I don't really have any much more analysis than that they took a step back, and Penn State, it is curious, because I wonder what would have happened if they played a little better against Ohio State and some things like that. But the secondary did take a significant step back. They went from top 5 to outside of the top 25. That is a significant drop off. And Rutgers was able to get some yards, but they're not good enough to complete and finish off the drive. I know KJ Winston had the interception, but it was just weird that on 3rd and 10, Rutgers converts another one. Rutgers converts another one. Indiana just had a big play there. Not sure what was going on, but it's something to point out that Penn State's secondary and pass defense is not what it was when it started the season. Kind of weird, right? The pass offense and the pass defense kind of had similar arcs. They started out great and then they progressively just trailed off throughout the season. That's a story to watch. And a Penn State secondary finishing not as strong as you would expect them to, and Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, and Daquan Hardy could all go into the draft. You're rebuilding from the ground up. And speaking of rebuilding, Manny Diaz, could he leave Penn State? The offseason, teams, programs are definitely going to be calling because he still has a top 5 defense combined with that secondary, but also the run defense, which went from an afterthought a year ago to top 3 in the nation. We want to talk about the secondary and give them credit. How about the run defense that doesn't get enough praise? They are top 3 in the nation. The statistics back it up. But the age-old question is now, can you keep Manny Diaz in Happy Valley? We'll discuss in just a moment. Let's hear from another one of our sponsors on today's episode, and that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can score in this NFL season with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On, and right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That is $150 if your team wins, any of them, any team you pick. All they got to do is win. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And right now, Penn State is a 20.5-point favorite against Michigan State with a total set at 41.5. If you like those lines, why don't you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the football season, kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And today's episode is also brought to you by Team Ticker. And people who are watching this episode can see in the back to my left that gorgeous retro display sign, the Team Ticker sign. Team Ticker is a one-of-a-kind sports sign for all Nittany Lion fans out there. The high-tech retro display shows you everything, whether it's football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, soccer, and softball. Team Ticker has you covered. Never miss a game, as it's going to relay everything. It's going to have a countdown for all of the upcoming events. It's going to have the latest stats, the latest news, the latest schedules, standings, and much more. It's an easy setup. I had it up and going in a matter of minutes. Team Ticker sent me that sign, and I am so grateful for them. There's a mobile app that connects to the internet so you can get those daily updates so that you're never guessing what's going on. It's always up to date, and it's easy to hang up on the wall as well. Setup is super simple. Anybody can do it. Each sign is officially licensed, meeting high-quality standards, and it's assembled by hand in the United States. Team Ticker is the ultimate upgrade to your Nittany Lions sports collection. Once you hang it on the wall, you're going to be the talk of all your fellow Penn State fans. If you're looking for that one catching item to showcase your team pride or a gift for that special Nittany Lions fan, go to teamticker.com and pick up your Team Ticker today. And right now, going on a special offer, a holiday deal, a flash sale at Team Ticker. Use that promo code Locked On at teamticker.com for $50 off your Nittany Lions Team Ticker sign. $50 off, whether you're getting it for yourself to spoil yourself for Christmas, for holidays, or you got a special someone, a special Nittany Lions fan that you want to give a gift to. Teamticker.com, promo code Locked On, going on now until further notice. Now through the holiday season, $50 off your Team Ticker purchase, only at teamticker.com. And in this final segment, let's discuss Manny Diaz. Is he going to stick around? And we don't have any evidence. He's been linked to some coaching jobs. Mississippi State is one of them. He's coached at Mississippi State, not once, but twice. He's had a couple of stints there. They have a head coaching opening. They've done it before. They've gone up to Happy Valley. They got Joe Moorhead to leave the offensive coordinator spot and come down to Starkville. And now Manny Diaz could be a candidate. We don't know what kind of phone calls he's gotten, but watching there was footage of him kind of taking it all in, looking around. It was in the tunnel post game. Manny Diaz wasn't exactly celebrating, and maybe got all the celebrations out of his system. You can only read too much into this, but Manny Diaz kind of looked around and just took it all in and really admired the moment. Didn't really have a smile on his face, just kind of acknowledged what was going on. Could that have been because it was his final home game at Beaver Stadium in a 2-year span? Maybe. That That behavior very much resembles somebody that might not return next year. Or the conversation's going to, maybe he's anticipating that the conversation's going to get difficult. For Pat Kraft, James Franklin, Penn State president Neely Bendapudi, it's going to be all hands on deck here to get Manny Diaz, because Penn State is really going to be in a bind. You were supposed to have a nice ideal setup here with the 5-star quarterback, the 5-star running back, plus a highly touted 4-star running back in Katron Allen, a better offensive line, right? You had the prospects to finally do it. And now you're going from replacing one coordinator to possibly two. And this off season goes from, I don't want to call it bad, definitely goes from questionable to bad, because if you're replacing two coordinators in this cycle when you are in a win now mode, I know Penn State fell short of expectations. They're probably going to finish 10-2 here. They're going to beat Michigan State. They're a 20-point favorite. We don't have to debate that. Penn State's going to be 10-2 with the New Year's Six Bowl. You are in a win now mode with the 12-team playoff. Anything can happen when any of those teams get in. Don't underestimate that. But then you go from having all this stability in the world, and that was something that James Franklin pointed out, how important it was to have both of your coordinators returning for that season when they went into this championship mode. I know they fell short of expectations, but you can't tell me that this team wasn't a contender at one time. They were, and honestly, you play some of those games over. You play them over. You play them 100 times. Penn State definitely wins. I would say almost half of them. Those games were close. They were one-score games if you don't make some of those certain decisions that they made. I know Michigan lost or won by 9, and I know Penn State lost by 8 to Ohio State, but those were essentially both one-score games. If you play them over and Penn State's able to change and fix its mistakes, there's a chance, there's an opportunity. That's how close they were. Michigan State and Ohio State got better, so did Penn State, but Penn State didn't get better enough to catch those teams. Hiring Manny Diaz, retaining or keeping him in Happy Valley, retaining him, and not having him hired away by a competitive program is, I think, Penn State's biggest key to the offseason. It should be the highest priority, and there's really nothing else. That so many things can go wrong if you have to now hire not one, but two coordinators. The way that he was acting in the tunnel leads me to believe that the conversation is going to get a little difficult, because Manny Diaz, like James Franklin, maybe not as emotional, but definitely emotionally driven. Manny Diaz is a fiery guy. I like him a lot. He's the best defensive. I mean, Brent Pry was really good, but Manny Diaz has taken this defense to a whole nother level. Do not want to see him leave Penn State for a variety of reasons, let alone the elite defenses. But on top of that, Penn State is still in a win now mode for 2024 and 2025. What conversation can you have with him to keep him in Happy Valley is yet to be seen. But based on that behavior after the Rutgers game, is not exactly the best sign. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I appreciate everyone joining the show, watching it live, and continue to subscribe, be in every day, or help support the channel. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Drew Allar, Bo Prabula dilemma, quarterback controversy. Is there one? We're going to continue to discuss that and more. Preview Michigan State. It's Thanksgiving this week. It's holiday season is here, folks. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all of you. Keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions for more Penn State football content.